But the way our show came to be rebooted was, I don't think it wasn't planned by NBC, because what happened back in 2016, I just wrapped up Fuller House, and I got an email from Max Muchnick. It says, "We're going to put the band back together," and I was like, "What?" We're going to do something. We're going to try to do something for Hillary, or just to get people out there to vote.
Right.
And yeah, he and David Cohan had an idea just to write something, a quote unquote episode of Will and Grace.
In this episode, we talk with Steve Sandoval. Steve is a multi-camera sitcom producer, having produced multiple TV situational comedies since the early 2000s. He also worked the entire run of the Emmy Award-winning series Will and Grace. Recently, he has produced Fuller House for Netflix and is currently producing the 11th season of Will and Grace.
This is Creative Disruption, the intersection where entertainment, data, and creativity meet. Here's your hosts, Ricky Ray Butler and Derral Leaves.
Welcome back to the Creative Disruption Podcast, where we talk about everything that's disrupting the industry. And I'm joined here by my co-host, Ricky Ray Butler. How you doing, Ricky?
I'm doing fantastic.
So here's the interesting thing, programming, TV programming. Back in the day, when a TV programming was canceled, they'd get bad ratings, and they're like, okay, we're going to cancel this show, right? That's what happens. Do you realize what's canceling shows now?
No.
The AI.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I was reading this post just recently that...
So what do you mean canceling shows? AI, like when it comes to broadcast television or YouTube? Or
if it's going to get a second season or third season.
Interesting. Okay, tell me more.
Well, so here's the the details on it for sure. There's so much data, and they can see how many people are watching, how many people are integrating it into their lives, that they're binge watching, whatever it may be, in a short amount of time, and the life of it. And there's certain metrics that they look at. One of the things is how many people are watching it right when they release. How many are binge watching it and coming back, and how long does that last? Where's the deterioration of that series from there? There's one called The Dollhouse on Netflix. It just barely got picked up. It was just in the news.
Oh, I've heard about it.
And they were, in the article itself, they were basically attributing their success to the Netflix algorithm. They're like, hey, the algorithm picked us up. And that's the only reason why we got to season 2. But the reality is this. It's like, at the end of the day, these, as we have more data, it helps us make the right data-driven decisions. And that's where, Netflix and Amazon and now Disney Plus will be able to do that versus, Nielsen ratings on television.
Well, one thing that's interesting to me is what these streaming platforms, they know exactly in the first 7 days or the first 30 days
if it's going to be picked up or not.
How many people are watching it, and then what the view-through rate is.
Exactly.
And so the data that we have today is just insane compared to what happened traditionally, and where there was a lot of dependency on Nielsen. But right now, when you look at the different streaming platforms, on YouTube, you end up becoming irrelevant on your own. Right. but with like a Netflix or an Amazon or a Hulu, I mean they're monitoring that data like a hawk and figuring out, okay, which shows are having, which shows are being binged, which shows have a high view-through rate, and then, which shows, really are, gaining traction or not. And so there's going to be more cancellations of shows quicker.
Here's an interesting thing, and I was at VidCon London. We were there. Mm-hmm. And one of the panels that was right before we actually went on and started talking about the AI, it was really, 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 really in depth on WWE's strategy of how they know who's actually trending or not. And they actually have a dashboard of every one of their characters, and they have to meet certain social marks, or they get canned. They get fired. And so it's like the whole thing is they're going back, okay, how can I improve my social score? Because they have this whole AI scoring system, which is off the charts. And that's where things are happening now in the industry, more about, okay, Do you know what if Seinfeld would have got canceled after the first pilot?
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
And it's like, how long is the adoption? Can we have a track record? Can we spot shows like Seinfeld that's coming down the road?
Yeah.
And I think this leads for a perfect segue to introduce our guest, because he's not only producing a show that's super successful, but that they actually rebooted it.
Yeah. So we're very lucky to have Steve Sandoval joining us today. Steve, has worked on a lot of impressive titles in television. First of all, Will and Grace. He's also worked on Fuller House on the Netflix series. The reboot of Full House.
So two reboots, right?
Yeah, two reboots. Yeah, Will and Grace was rebooted as well as Fuller House.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
That's my pleasure to be here.
Could you just give us a little bit about your background, just for the viewers and listeners?
Well, I've been working in multicams mostly for the past 20 years or so, and that's really the bulk of my experience. But I started working in this industry on a show called Dream On, which was an HBO comedy from years back. I don't even know if you guys remember it, but it was one of the first comedies ever on HBO. I think the first comedy on HBO was a show with O.J. Simpson about some football players.
How did that turn out?
I think it was on for a few years. But this comedy was a single camera comedy that we shot out in Sun Valley, and it was a great show. It was produced by the same people I'm working for currently, which is Universal Television. Back then it was called MCA Television, but it was basically Universal. And it was just a show that was kind of created so that they can use their archives of old footage. And Marta Kaufman and David Crane, who went on to create Friends, this was their show that they created with John Landis, who was the director. And they used the huge archive of clips from Universal created television shows from the 50s and 60s, and then they went back and used Universal movies way back into the 30s. But it was a great show, and it went for 6 seasons. And then I met these two guys, and one was named Max Muchnick and the other David Cohan. They were writers on that show, little baby writers in an office about this big.
Wow.
Yeah, and they said when they left and when they walked out, they said, when we get our show, we're going to call you in. You're going to coordinate our show. I said, yeah, okay.
Good luck on that one.
Good luck.
How many times have you heard that?
Yeah, but then about a year later, they called me. They got a pilot, and it was called Boston Common. It was for NBC, and it was on the air for 2 years, and then I was doing other things, and then they called me back, and they got this other show picked up called Will and Grace, and so that was back in '98. So I started working on that show in '98, and that went until 2006, and then I was out of work for a long time in this industry anyway, and started working then came back and worked for the Disney Channel for about 5 years and did a bunch of multicams there because they were the ones doing the multicams at the time. Right. And got on Max and Dave. These guys, they had a show for TBS called Clipped a few years back in 2015. That was a 1-season one-off. And then I did this Fuller House, and then Will and Grace, miraculously, came back from the dead. So I've been there for the past 3 years.
So you've been able to see a lot, over the course of your career in the industry of how things have changed. And one of the things that I noticed, especially with Will and Grace, is like very clever writing. And it was needed. Like at that time, you had other shows. It was just like really brash or whatever, but this was like really clever writing, and they would lead into the next joke. Like there was an ongoing joke that was there. Yeah. Could you talk about that creative process? I know that probably wasn't your department that was there, but
it wasn't mine. I got to see what they did for, glimpses of how they did. I would be in the room with them once in a while talking about production things and observing what they did. But it's a group effort. They come into a room about like this, and there's 12 to 15 funny people sitting around a table, and they write it. They kind of almost gang write everything. They start in the beginning of before the season even starts, and they get right on boards, and they arc a season out. They said, okay, we're going to do this is what's going to happen to this character, that character, the other. And they plan it all out, and then they start coming up with ideas for episodes, and they start writing episodes. They send writers off to write individual episodes, and then they come them back together, and they polish them up, and and then we bring everybody together, read it in front of the studio and the network, and they continue to write throughout the week. So the writing process it's the hardest job on the show, definitely, and it's a long process. It doesn't just they aren't just banging them out, so it's fascinating to see what they can do.
Yeah, I've never been a part of that process, but I can only imagine like how fun that would be.
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's probably some debating that happens, when people are like talking about different characters and what they should be doing.
It can get heated, I'm sure. We hear stuff through the walls sometimes, but I don't know how they do
And
it.
they weren't thin walls; they were like 12 foot.
Yeah. But just imagine they'll coming into a room every day, and looking at the same people across from a table like this every day. That's got to be part of a challenge. But they really, they come through all the time. It's just amazing to see what they come up with. It really is.
So you've had a lot of experience, of course, on television, and then also, working on Fuller House on Netflix. Mm-hmm. How has the landscape changed from your perspective?
Well, I remember, like none of us, when we went to Netflix, none of us knew how it worked. So the couple of executives came in and kind of told us, because we wanted to know, well, how do you realize that this is going to be a hit show? Is it a hit show or not? How do you keep it on the air? What do you look at? You don't do Nielsen ratings. So what is it that you use to determine that a show is a good show? And they didn't really give us a lot of details, but they kind of said, well, we look at how many people sign up for the service once the show is premiered. So they'll promo a show into the world, and then they'll start gauging how many people, how many new subscribers they get. Right. And then obviously how it works from there. They can see how many people watch, how many people finish an episode, how many actually not people, but how many devices will start a show and then watch it through the first episode, how many will watch 3 in a row, how long does it take them to finish the season, those kind of things. So for us, it was a new way of understanding how they consider a show a success or not. So, but it was still, to be quite honest, it was still the same kind of a process for a multicam show as far as
the production side
of it, and the writing of it's pretty much the same. Yeah.
Yeah, what I find fascinating, though, is kind of like the banter that we talked about a little bit before is now, hey, is there going to be a second season, and how much money is going to go behind that second season is based off of what actually happens, now and currently, on that content. So, and I know that you had another opportunity, like you did one season with Fuller House, and you're able to experience that, and then you had another opportunity to come reboot Will and Grace. Yeah. Which is quite the process. I mean, like that alone for shows to reboot it was off air for how long?
It was off the air for 11 years.
For 11 years. Wow. And I would assume that the reason why it came back on was they were looking for these subgroups of, okay, what was really, really popular at the time? Mm-hmm. Do they still have kind of a cult following? Could we actually do a reboot that makes sense? I know all those decisions were being made.
Right.
But was the audience viewing back, 11 years ago versus now, is it different?
It's different, yeah. I think there are fewer people that initially watch the show as it airs on the network. So I can't really remember the numbers that we were getting towards the end of our show, but I think we were kind of averaging around 11 million viewers for a first run on the first night that we aired. And back in those days, people were doing DVR, so They were watching. Some people were time shifting it, but most people were watching it when it aired and then in repeats. But now it's just totally different. And I know my television viewing habits are a lot different than they were, 15 years ago. So I don't hardly ever, the only thing I watch live these days pretty much are sports. And even then I don't really like to watch sports live because I like to flip through commercials if I can. Yep. I'll watch them maybe an hour or two shifted. So I'm almost watching sports live. But yeah, but it's a different it's a different way of watching sitcoms, and the bulk of our viewers come with within 3 days or 7 days after it originally airs. So yeah.
Yeah, and to see the shifting of the patterns of the viewers is very interesting over the course of 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
But your hardcore people, they're the ones that are coming back, or who's the audience now?
Well, our audience now, I mean, I think gay people love our show, but our audience, it's more skewed, at least in the initial viewings. More women watch our show than men, but that's just because of the content of our show. Our show isn't for everybody. I don't think it's
right,
and it's also kind of politically charged, our show. So in this world that we live in politically, it's over here. It's not over there. It's not in the middle. It's kind of over. It's definitely left leaning, and so I think that's affected our. I think that part of our culture and the way our culture is kind of split these days in this country, in a lot of other countries around the world. I think that's affecting how people are watching television too. There's guys that will watch Roseanne, or they'll watch what's the other one? Man with a Plan. Is that the one? No.
Yeah.
No.
I think Man with
the other man one.
You're talking the Tim
Allen show,
yeah.
yeah. So they'll watch that show because it kind of lines up with their politics, but they won't watch Will and Grace because it doesn't line up with their politics. Whereas 20 years ago, you just wanted to watch the funniest show.
Yeah.
You just watch TV.
Right.
Just watch something. Right. So
and relax.
So do you feel like something like Will and Grace, like a reboot, is it always good to go back to the original network, or is it like would you view it, maybe this would be better fit on like Amazon Prime, or on Netflix, or whatever that may be?
I would assume that kind of a platform would make it so that more eyeballs could be on a show like ours. Yes, that's my own personal opinion.
And why is that?
I just think because more people have access to the shows when they want to watch them. Right now, it airs on NBC and then it airs on Hulu. Okay, so Hulu gets it the next day. Well, Hulu is one of those, I don't know how many people subscribe to Hulu based on how many people subscribe to Netflix or Amazon Prime, but I would assume that there are less subscribers there at Hulu.
Absolutely.
So if it was on, Netflix, I think more people would be watching it. But that's just because of a number of subscribers. Yeah. But the way our show came to be rebooted was, I don't think it wasn't planned by NBC, because what happened back in 2016, I just wrapped up Fuller House, and I got an email from Max Muchenik. It says, "We're going to put the band back together," and I was like, "What?" We're going to do something. We're going to try to do something for Hillary, or just to get people out there to vote.
Right.
And he and David Cohan had an idea. Just to write something, a quote unquote episode of Will and Grace that would encourage people to get out to vote. So I don't know if you're familiar with what happened back then in 2016, but they called me and Tim Kaiser, who's the other.
So was this going to be just one episode?
A little one-off thing that would Max had the sets in storage because the sets after Will and Grace ended went to Emerson College,
right?
And the main set, and it stayed in their library for 10 years, and then they said it has to go, and NBC wanted them back. Well, Max brought them back, put them in storage, and NBC was kind of knocking on his door. We need those sets back. We're going to put them in an archive, and he said, "Well, I have to do something with this set before giving it back to NBC." So they decided just to write an episode and about the election and try to get people out to vote. And I don't know if you ever saw it, but it was, but we came together. The cast was on board. We went to CBS Radford, where we used to shoot the show. We asked, "Hey, do you have a place where we could shoot something like this?" "Well, yeah, you can go in the basement over here." So we went into the basement, got the set put back together.
In the basement.
In the basement. We had to kind of rebuild it because it was in pieces and kind of destroyed after going back and forth across the country. And the writers, they worked together, just Max and Dave and Gary Janetti and Bill Rubel basically came together and wrote this thing. And the actors came together and we put them in costumes and we made them up and we put lights up and and we shot a little episode of television in front of about 100 people, and it cut together really well. They were still funny, good. The script was great. I don't know if you guys saw it, but at one point they were going to do it without permission. They were just going to put it out there, but some good legal people.
Yeah, that's usually what happens. It's like, we're going to just do it. No.
It said, Max, Dave, you have to go to NBC and get permission to do this. So they did. They went to Bob Greenblatt, who was the president of NBC at
and
the
they
time.
had a pilot, basically.
They basically had, well, they just got permission to put it on YouTube. You know?
Got it.
And they said, yes, go ahead. And then 7 million people watched it, and NBC, I guess, decided, well, that's a lot more eyeballs that we're getting on our shows right now. Maybe it could work. And then they made it into a new show. So,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It wasn't something they cultivated. It was something that was kind of handed to them.
happened.
Yeah.
So this happened.
But
NBC saw the reaction of the audience and like, okay, let's reboot it.
There might be something there. I don't know exactly how it happened in their world, but it happened after this thing was made.
But I love it how he's working for Fuller House. He's like, hey, put the band back together. Okay, we'll see you.
Well,
we're going.
It wasn't quite like that, but yeah, it came at a good time. Let's just say
good
that
time.
much,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's very fascinating, and I think doing reboots is pretty risky, just because you have this sense of essence in the first original. It's like, for me, I'm a Star Wars geek, like more than you can ever imagine. My first kid's named Skywalker. I mean, no, it's not really. It's Anakin. But anyway.
Is it really?
No, it's not. But anyway, you have this, people just viewing how the season is or the episodes are, and then that could change it. That could change their perception. Like for me, when I saw The Last Jedi, I was like, oh.
I know. A lot of people felt that way.
It was like, what did they do to my childhood?
Yeah.
And why I love Star Wars. But in this sense, was that a big risk going into it, like with Will and Grace, or is that something more, hey?
I think that's always something that you have to probably lay awake at night thinking about. I'm sure the writers went through that. But it turned out that I think that the quality of the writing on this, a lot of the writers, the original writers came back. Not all of them. There's some new young writers as well. But I think that the quality of the writing on Will and Grace was still there. So in our case, it worked out. And in Fuller House, it was a different show, basically with the same kind of feel,
Right.
So it's really a different show. Our show is just the same show, as if it never ended.
Right.
So
one's a spin-off versus the other.
Yeah, that Fuller House really is a spin-off, but Will and Grace is just a reboot or continuation of the original show with
So
older actors.
Like I know that you're like still in production and you're doing multiple seasons with Will and Grace, but the question is that will end at one time. And if you're looking for your next project, are you more leaning towards traditional broadcast or more like the Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus?
Well, I think the market kind of dictates it. So who's making the shows? So that's where I'll be looking.
And who is making the most shows right now?
it's Netflix is still making sitcoms.
Yeah.
This year, NBC did not make one sitcom. Or
Wow.
multicam sitcom,
Right.
other than Will and Grace. They didn't even, I think they may have done 2 pilots, but they didn't. Usually you'll see a network do 3 or 4, 5, 6, depends, multicam pilots. But NBC didn't do them this year. ABC had Fresh Off the Boat last year. I think they have a couple of them. But CBS is the company who is still making multicam sitcoms, and I did a pilot for them this past year. They did get picked up, and it'll be on the air it's as a mid-season replacement. It was called Broke, but
out of all the ones that you just talked about, CBS has more online digital footprint.
That's true.
Than the other two, and they
That's
know
true.
like they have a way to distribute it differently than just broadcast.
That's true. I agree. So, and I enjoyed working for CBS. It's a great studio, but Netflix, Amazon Prime, YouTube kind of got into it for a while, but I don't know if they're still actively producing scripted or
Right.
not.
Yeah, they're staying very niche. They're
they're
focusing on sports and music and just like a
and
couple
then
of different things.
influencers that have big audiences on
Right.
YouTube. But the other company though too that's really really fascinating is Apple. Like all the deals that are going together right now.
Absolutely,
I mean,
it's gonna be interesting to
huge.
see what happens there. And then you have Quibi as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, who knows what's going to happen there? You know, it's very risky to go from being an entertainment, you know, executive to, you know, creating a platform. I mean, there's a lot of different, you know, things
yeah.
they have to look at that are going to be they're going to be very difficult.
It's fascinating, and you know they're trying to go after obviously the short attention span theater, or the way people view things these days. So let's see. Hopefully, Quibi. I want that to be successful. Yeah. I want Apple to be successful. I love it, but I don't know how much can we watch. You know, I just don't know.
I really do believe this. It's like, and I'll debate anyone on this short attention span.
Yeah,
it's about quality content. Like
I
how
agree.
many people went and watched Game of Thrones
That's
and
right.
they were like, you know, waiting till it would come on just so
Right.
they can, you know, consume it.
That's
and
right.
and for me, if the writing's good, the production's good, you're gonna get their eyeballs.
I agree,
And I think Quibi will do well there. I think
Yeah.
they will have high quality content.
Yeah.
The question is, are they going to be able to build an audience and look at it? I mean, it's about creating the right team, and then, you know, poaching from those other platforms to really
I don't know
that
if it's
audience.
poaching from platforms. It's like you have to have solid content. So like Netflix, like if you were to say if there's one series on Netflix that brought more subscribers in the beginning, what would that be?
House of Cards.
House of Cards,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
And what on Netflix is of that quality right now?
Yeah.
Tell me one show that's as good as House of Cards was that first season.
Yeah. That House of
don't
Cards
know.
was off the charts. It was
What
good.
Russian Doll was pretty damn good. Was that Netflix?
Yeah, that's Netflix.
That was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But there are, for every one that's that good, there are honestly 10 that are just
But that's a part
it's
of
flying. It's throwing flies against the wall and seeing what sticks, right?
but
flies.
But that's a part of their business strategy is all they need is to have a couple what we call bangers.
Yeah.
After that, you know, they'll watch these other stuff while they're waiting for the next big
And it's really
release.
not about viewership as much as it is about subscriptions and how how do they retain their subscribers and how do they find new subscribers?
Right.
And I think they're going obviously
Well, they're
around
going to
the world,
saturate.
right?
They're
So
going
I think there's
hit
going to be a
saturation
bubble.
point. Yeah,
personally.
for sure.
I mean,
For
there
sure.
are a lot of platforms out there. I mean, there's just a lot of them, and it seems like there's a new announcement like every month of another platform that's going to get started.
Yep.
And so I believe there's a good chance that the other networks and broadcast are going to try to get much more aggressive in the space as well. And so there's going to be winners and losers. So when you like have Disney, you have Apple, which are both like the family-friendly content platforms. And then you have Netflix and Amazon, who are already giants. It's going to be interesting to see who maintains market share.
And the question's going to be
who doesn't grow at all.
The model of how the company interacts with the creators. Because it's like, you know, at the end of the day, is it really Netflix that's bringing this show together? No. You know what I'm saying? They might give you data. They might give you opportunity, but it's not Netflix that's pulling it together.
Well, they're the highest bidder. They're the highest bidder. That's what's going on right now.
And they're willing to put kind of some money, not only money behind it, but opportunity that's there. But at the end of the day, that is going to be a big problem for traditional television because they want so much control that they're like, no, we need to control the creative. Instead of saying, hey, creative, here's some data and do what you want with it. Like if it works well, we'll produce more. If it doesn't, then guess what?
Sure.
We'll cancel you.
Well, you guys remember like a couple years back, you know, like during the Sundance Film Festival or the other film festivals where, you know, Amazon and Netflix, you know, were the ones buying everything. They're outbidding the studios.
Yep.
Today it's a little different. Like it's like they're much more integrated. Like they're doing a lot of different stuff, like building infrastructure in like Spain for the European productions. They're doing stuff in Canada. They're also very involved in Atlanta. They've gotten so integrated where, you know, they're not going out there and like buying shows from festivals. They're making deals before everything's completely written.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's going to keep happening.
So I look at all the companies. I think Amazon's really interesting. I really am digging some of the shows.
Well, you know
on
why?
there.
Because I think Amazon has a leader over there.
That's right.
There is a Jen. Come on, I just lost her name. Don't get old if you can avoid it. But anyway, she was the president of NBC, and now she's over there at Amazon. Jen Salke, I believe. And you have a creative mind who's driving that. Like, look at the best years of NBC, which probably put out some of the most amazing comedies ever in television. And like Warren Littlefield was in charge of many of the years of the greatest. Like he was his last year, he greenlit Will and Grace, one of the last great multicam sitcoms, right? I think there has to be somebody in charge, somebody with a vision, somebody who knows what's good and what isn't good and makes decisions like this to curate what people are going to be seeing on these platforms. So I don't know who's doing it at Netflix because I just, I'm so busy. I don't have time to look into that kind of stuff. But I think there's somebody at Amazon who has a vision and who's really going to be bringing in the right people to write these shows.
Right.
So I don't know. I think the
So you're betting on Amazon?
I think so, but just because I think I've been seeing, they do less quantity, but I think they do what the percentage of what they put out that is really good is better than the percentage of what Netflix
all I got to
puts out.
say is Amazon versus quality versus Netflix, like Jack Ryan, that was like one of the best action shows I've ever
great.
seen in my life.
For television?
It was really
Come
good.
on.
Yeah.
It was great. Bosch.
Yeah, Bosch is like
Awesome.
off the charts too.
Goliath, the first season, and Goliath, second season was kind of funky, but Goliath is awesome. I mean, it's a great show. What did I just watch with Kate Beckinsale? What was it called?
Widow.
Widow was really
Yep.
good, and kind of on a big scale too. Great locations and things like that. Just great stuff. I just watched I Am Mother on Netflix.
Okay, now
It was
that
a
creeped me
movie.
out. I
Yeah.
haven't watched it. I was like I was trying to go to sleep and get up and make
Yeah.
it to this podcast. And when you roll over on Netflix, it auto plays a trailer.
Yeah.
I watched that trailer and it literally freaked me out.
Like, do you want to watch it? That's the thing.
I'm going to watch it, but I'm like I can't watch it tonight because I won't go to sleep.
It was interesting.
It
was pretty well done. Yeah.
apocalyptic
Yeah.
robots running the world type of thing. So
One that I liked recently on Netflix, and I agree because there's a lot of original programs where it's like, not that good, but then there's a good handful I think that I really like, and then I like the deals that they do with like English production companies,
Yep.
like getting like Peaky Blinders and all
Right.
those different programs. But one that I really liked that I think could be a trend of the future is Haunted Hill House.
I just finished it.
Oh my goodness!
Episode 5 of that series was probably one of the scariest things I've ever seen.
Right.
Television or film in the last 20 years, honestly. It was well done. It ended kind of... Did you watch the end?
don't
I
spoil it.
I won't
here.
spoil it,
but
but-
sure. But continue, you're fine.
But the episode 5 of that show was just so well done and scarier than hell, man.
It is.
It was really well done.
Well, and this is the thing. I do a little bit of investing on the side when it comes to productions, and I have a couple of different. I'm usually targeted to a specific niche, and I've been investing a little bit into like horror films, and I think it's going to be.
They make money.
And I've also done a Bible series as
It's
well.
just like horror
I'm
films
both-
and Bible films.
I'm on two sides of the spectrum because that's where the money is.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do
The
a horror
devil
film,
and
there's gonna
God.
be money. But I'll tell you this. I think there's going to be a much bigger trend because of Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a bigger trend of horror series.
Yep.
Because that was done so well.
I loved it.
And it scared the heck out of me.
Yeah.
Like I had a hard time finishing it. I could watch one episode a day, and I'm usually not easily scared.
Like what scared you the most? I mean,
You're so much deeper in the storyline, and that's the thing about series compared to film.
Yeah.
With film, you have a casual relationship with the characters.
Correct.
But with series, you have really created this bond, and you're invested in the story, and it's much more real.
Yeah.
And it's heavy. When something bad happens, I mean, you feel like you're losing that relationship. So,
Yeah.
anyways. I felt like it definitely scared me in a way that no other film has.
character
I
development.
guess I gotta
in that
watch
show.
it.
Oh, you definitely gotta watch
I've
it.
definitely debated. I'm like, I don't know.
It's
But
worth it.
It is worth it. So it's interesting. I think we could talk about different productions and things that's there. I think for me, it's like, where's the industry going? Like, where do you see it? Like, you've been knee deep, if not deeper, into Hollywood and productions. Where do you see this going in 5 years?
Well, it's hard for me to really predict things like that, because when they put on Survivor against us way back when, I said this shit's not gonna, who's going to watch this?
Yeah.
Or when they built that stage for Big Brother at CBS Radford, I said, why are they building this for this? Who's going to watch this 24 hours? Who's going to? So I mean, I may not be the best guy to figure it out, but where do I think things are going? I think people like to watch sitcoms. I found that out from working at Disney Channel and watching the kids show up for these things in the audience and scream at the top of their lungs to the point where you have to hold your ears. So I still think there is an audience for sitcoms. I just think that that writers underestimate their audiences, and that they, I don't know, maybe on some of these lesser sitcoms, they're not doing their audience justice. I still think people will watch good, funny shows, no matter what they are. So same with dramas. People, like, I will always want to watch a great drama. Do I want to watch a crappy kind of a procedural? I don't watch those, but a great drama, I'll always watch a great drama. But you put a show on the air, something like Fleabag. Have you watched Fleabag on Amazon Prime? Oh my God, guys.
Is it good?
What a brilliant, brilliant show. Brilliant. It's a BBC co-production with them, and it's just brilliant. It's brilliant. It's one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time, but also it's real, and it's about a woman dealing with some pretty real stuff in her life. But this actress, she's fantastic. But Fleabag, shows like that, as long as they're good, people are going to watch. I think just, writers keep writing stuff that's good, and people are going to come to it.
So the thing that interests me, about where content is like we're getting new mediums, how people are consuming, and that's where the creativity is actually, they're upping the game.
Right.
And like you said, 11 years ago, the ratings that you had isn't necessarily the same. And even your own viewing behavior is not even the same. My viewing behavior is not even the same. Like I can't even remember when I actually sat down and watched some broadcast television. It's been so long.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, how are you going to tie the creative in to really connect with the audience? And I think at the end of the day, whether it's a horror film, whether it's something about Jesus, whether we brought up Bosch, it's like one whole season's kind of one long story.
Right.
It's just
like a novel.
It's a novel. It's going from, chapter to chapter, and it's just playing off each other, and it's just brilliantly done. I think that's the new way that people are consuming. And then you also brought up Survivor and other things that are competitive reality type programming. Now, the most interesting demographic that I see is Generation Z. And I have kids that are Generation Z, and their consuming patterns are completely opposite of, older millennials, or even, Gen X or whatever. This is an industry that's coming up. And here you have Disney that's doing a huge pivot, to do Disney Plus. And do you feel like when you worked with Disney, they had a good pulse on that market? Because they always knew the wave coming in. I thought that Disney has done a great job of understanding that. Do you feel like they still have that?
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be a huge success. I worked with people over there. The production people that I worked with they're all brilliant over there at Disney Channel. They found a way to, make product at a certain within certain budgetary constraints that kids want to watch, and they found a way to continually have it available to kids. This is before kids had tablets in their hands. So yeah, I think they found a way to create an audience that would stick with them for life. So I think Disney's going to be very successful at this. I think Disney Plus is going to be great. Kids are, kids. I don't know if you go to a restaurant these days, but a kid always has a device in their hand.
I'm always screen looking to see what YouTube channel they're on. It's crazy, but
they're watching YouTube for the most part. But I think Disney will take it. Will eat into that.
Disney does, but there is something, and it was in a previous conversation we had. But Disney's definitely going in that direction. But the ones that are really hitting Gen Z right now is CW. And my kids, they will literally sit down and watch just Arrow and Supergirl and all the stuff that's come on Netflix. But they, I've told them, like, hey, you can watch that on, YouTube TV. And they're like, why would I want to go on YouTube TV and have the commercials? I want to consume as much as I want. And the way that the distribution, I don't know if you've seen how they are distributing it now. But it's just like immediately just on Netflix, so you can consume it. They don't have to wait for a full season,
right?
Which is good.
Right. Yeah. In the Warner Brothers, the new platform they're coming up with.
So we got more platforms, right?
Yeah, there's more.
I mean, since the merger with AT&T, there's a huge creative brain trust over there, and they have such a huge library to pull from. So it's a part, and HBO is going to be part of it somehow too. With Peter Roth, who oversees Warner Brothers Television, I mean, that guy's a genius. For obviously the CW, that's all their content.
Right.
So he's a genius, and I think he's going to be I don't know exactly how it's working over there, but I would assume he's going to be a part of that. So whatever that platform is going to be, that's going to be interesting to see. So they're going to be giving people work. Warner Brothers, Disney is going to keep people working. Apple is going to keep people working, and Netflix will keep you working. And so there's 5 major.
And I personally think it's too much, and
I do too. But we're happy for it because everybody's working. Everybody's working.
Well, this is the thing. I don't know if it's too much. I think it'll be too much when I have a list of series and videos that I want to watch.
I can guarantee you it's already that way.
I have that on my Netflix queue already. Yeah.
Like, I'm able to catch up right now. Like, yes, there's a lot of content, but I think there's still room for better content.
Well, I agree there's room for better content, but I don't know. Maybe I would like the future a little bit different, but I don't know. This is like another platform. Like this is the first I've heard that Warner was going to actually do one.
I'm not convinced that any of the other platforms have a solution for Gen Z yet. I mean, I think there are things that are gaining momentum that are exciting.
That YouTube is. 100%.
No, that's what I was actually going to say. I was actually just going to
say.
cut
you off. Okay.
Yes, you cut me off.
Stop it.
Stop it now, Derral. Hold your horses. But no, YouTube has come up with the solution for Gen Z and younger. I mean, my daughter, that's a 3-year-old. I mean, she doesn't like navigating Netflix or any other platform.
I don't like navigating Netflix.
Right. No, neither do I.
Honestly, but it creates
anxiety
in me.
Sure.
It's and then I can't tell you how many times I just go, okay, fuck it.
You just go for it.
I just turn it off because I can't decide what to watch.
Yeah.
Because there's too much.
Sure.
And I don't know if any of it's good, and I don't want to invest the time if it's not good. And if I do invest the time and it's bad, then I hate myself for it. Yeah. So I don't know.
Well, so my question
is, a dilemma of life.
Is Disney or Apple or any of the other platforms that are starting out? I know Quibi's trying to do this. Are they going to beat YouTube at their own game? Because my daughter tries to consume as much content as quickly as possible. Yeah, flip through it and watch a little bit there. Oh, don't like it. I'm going to go to the next one. I mean, my question is Disney going to have like the FBE or like Fine Brothers Entertainment type content where they're going to have reaction videos, following and leveraging the trends that are on YouTube, which are the majority of the viewership when it comes to Generation Z?
I can tell you this, like YouTube has it down. There's certain things that they struggle with, but they definitely have it down to get people to consume, especially that demographic. Like they are super connected with their creators. I have two teenagers. Well, one's 12 years old, but they will sit down, and if I don't get them off their phone, they'll watch like 3 or 4 hours straight of the same creator. I'm like, how can you? Number one, how can you even do that? but that's how they consume it. And, they're really, really getting involved with everything that's going on. And they'll watch an episode that's, usually about 10 to 12 minutes long. They'll probably watch it 5 or 6 times, and it's just like they watch it back to back. They just want to be entertained in that way. And YouTube's a really, really interesting way to get content. And I think the AI is super smart of getting the right content for that person. They'll predict what they'll watch next. But where they
and we've
don't,
talked about this before. Their featured videos are spot on.
Yeah, it's just 100%. But what the problem is scripted content, and that's where YouTube has really struggled. I mean, they have Cobra Kai, which is great. It brought a lot of eyeballs on it, and now instead of doing it behind a paywall, because that was the problem I view where YouTube was facing, is they put it behind a paywall when they should have just put it out on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And once that starts clicking for YouTube, I think it's game over for Gen Z, because it's just like, hey, if you want the eyeballs, we can get you the eyeballs. And the ad revenue that's coming from that, I mean, it's lucrative. I mean, you're looking at some licensing deals that's lucrative or whatever, but you get, hundreds of millions of video views. It's very, very lucrative. And then you work with the integrated branding in there too. It could be really, really an interesting direction. So my prediction for the next couple of years is YouTube will be putting less behind paywall and getting more in that because of the fear of gaming. Like Fortnite and
are they lifting up the paywall?
They are right now.
Okay, yeah. They've lifted that.
Yeah,
and I think YouTube Premium is now just for people that want to avoid advertising.
Which that's what it should be. Yeah,
yeah. You should be able to pay for that. I know that they about 3 or 4 months ago they did a major pivot on the production end. They called it a pivot.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a new word to me.
The pivot.
The pivot. So they were pivoting away from developing scripted stuff to just only concentrating on everything else.
Yep.
So they're just kind of, I know that they're just kind of finishing out whatever projects that were already in the pipeline, but they're not developing new scripted stuff.
I think it's smart because, do what you do best. And if something scripted is going to happen, let it happen organically. Because I think we probably will see new iterations of sitcoms on YouTube, catered to a much younger audience where they're just going to get it. And YouTube alone, taking a centralized approach is going to make it really difficult for them to be successful. I think it has to happen organically.
Yeah, but my point is most of them don't want that. They want more the reality competition-based type of content.
Yeah,
and then every once in a while they'll binge watch something like Arrow or something like that. Something that's more scripted. But it's like you got to have that. And I think that's where Cobra Kai came in. It's just like you have this vertical and it performed extremely well on YouTube. It was
well done.
And it's very, very well done. I can see content like that really performing well on YouTube. But where YouTube's always made the mistake, and I'll be the first one to point this out, is they bring in a creator on YouTube that's been doing unscripted content for 10 years or for 5 years. And so, okay, you're under script, and it doesn't feel real. Right. It has that disconnection. Yeah, wait a minute, I have to read my lines?
Yeah, some people are actors and some people aren't. They may be, you may be great in front of a camera, just riffing and talking about life or whatever it is. But if you were the person charged with actually writing the script and then performing that script, you might not be good at that. So
maybe the Freddie W's and the Corridor Digitals will rise up again.
I hope so, because that's the YouTube that I love. I mean, the whole Freddie Wong.
Steve, I don't know if you're familiar with these channels, but they're basically channels that were the first ones to do gaming in real life, and so they create different
heavily VFX type stuff.
Right, they create little series or videos about taking a game and being inside that game.
Right,
and it did really well.
Yeah,
but. The type of content they're creating wasn't benefited when YouTube changed their algorithm, and I mean Corridor Digital is still kicking.
Well, yeah,
really
but it's
good
like
job,
you
which
have
they're going to be on their program.
Your
later
budget
on.
comes by ad revenue that's on previous videos, and when you take that out, it's like, okay, we're going to put how much time for a 3 or 4 minute video when the video needs to be 10, or it increases your budget from there. So yeah.
So the question I have: are the Big Brothers and the Survivors going to last? Or is there a chance that there's going to be similar content on YouTube?
You tell me anyone from Generation Z that's watching that?
I
don't
would
know
not be
anybody who is.
surprised. Well, this is the thing. This is the thing.
My
You know,
wife
hear me
loves
out.
it.
Yeah,
She's
because
not
that's
Gen
the
Z.
demo. That's the
Well,
audience.
no. So I got into.
But you're,
I got into both
you're
Big
a
Brother
millennial,
and Survivor like late into the game, and then my wife and I binge watched everything, both on both programs. We got in like. I think we seriously got into it like probably like 6-7 years ago, and we're like, what have we been missing? Because it's really good. It's very strategic. But with that
But
said,
you're not the audience. I mean, that's a
no,
millennial
I'm
audience.
not. Yeah, you're right. You know, you're 100% right there. But but unscripted is a YouTube thing.
Yeah, no, that's where they definitely dominate is the unscripted. But it's like there is like from the production side, I see them moving forward with content creators and letting content creators have a little bit more control, because where it was before, they'd bring in these production houses. Okay, we're gonna do a series on YouTube, and this is where it's gonna be, and this is what you need to do. And they're like, wait a minute, this totally deviated from what the idea was. And that's where I think the disconnect was, and they weren't as amped on pushing and promoting, you know, like they could. And when the viewers would watch it, they're like, this wasn't really what I was expecting, you know, because they get this familiarity of that content creator.
Sure.
Yeah.
Steve, you mentioned earlier that, you know, you do whatever you can to sometimes skip the advertising and to skip through it. One thing that I'm a big believer of is that a much bigger part of the marketing mix is going to be inside of the content rather than outside. Yeah. Are you seeing any trends there from a broadcast perspective?
Well, it's been yes. So the past few years there have been new deals and things like that at the studio level, at the network level. So they are integrating. They call it integration. They are integrating products into the shows. And in our first season back, Honda had a deal with NBC, and I think Sean Hayes did a commercial for them. And then last year Google did a deal with NBC or the Universal Television, either one. Some of their products were featured on Will and Grace and integrated into the script. So that's what's happening. I'm sure with the viewership going down for the networks, that they have to find new ways of generating revenue somehow. So that's definitely something they're working on, and it's they're actively. They have departments now set up at studios to handle this kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a real thing. It can be real organic and work real well, and it can be tough to integrate stuff organically into a show. They don't tell you have to do it. They ask, will you do this? And you say, yes, of course we'll do that, because we're all part of a team and we're trying to work for the greater good. But it's difficult to take something that's not part of the writer's original concept or ideas and taking something from the outside and bringing it in and then trying to make it work within what the writers are trying to work on. But they do. They do when it's when they're asked to do something, they usually step up and do it.
Yeah, and I think that's where things are leading. That's where the creativity needs to come. So, okay, here's a product. Do something, an episode around this, because I guarantee you that the ad dollars, the way that it was being spent before, was the best possible they could at the time. Now we can track everything. We can see exactly what's going on, and you can make data-driven decisions where that dollar is going to be. And so the writing's on the wall, and I've seen it, and I've worked with talented creators too. It's just like, that's just a prop, you know, and then it can go. Now the problem is going to be is where the brand comes in. It's like, wait, you can't do that. You can't do that with my thing, and it has to be approved.
Well, they've told that's happening.
Yeah,
that's happening. So, but we kind of know going in what you can and can't do, what you can and can't do. You can't say anything derogatory about the product. You can't say that it can do something that it can't do, right, even if it's a joke. And it's funny if it would do that. No, you can't. You could only say that it can do things it actually does. Yep. And you can't be disparaging to the product. You can't show it doing something dangerous, or you can't show it exploding. Like if it's a phone, you can't show it exploding, even though that might be funny. No, you can't do that. Right. But so it is.
And it's about getting guidelines from the brand as well.
Yeah, you get guidelines
of do's and don'ts.
They're not shy.
Yeah, and not shy. And that's another thing for like the brand to also learn is, getting integrated in a way that's consistent with the program.
Right.
If you're inconsistent, there's a bigger chance of blowback than being in there authentically.
And then there's the we're shooting ahead, so we're shooting here in the summer. We don't even know right now when we're going to air. We'll probably air sometime in the fall, late fall, or early or in the winter. We don't really know, but so their product that they have products that aren't out yet. Okay, so they couldn't give us the product. Well, we need the product because we have to know what it does. Well, we don't have it yet, but we can be there and show it to you, but we have to have the security guard and this person and that. So, they're real. It was like we did Google 3 phones, right? So they weren't out yet. So it was real. There were a lot of restrictions about how we could actually get them to see what they do so that we can know how to try to work them into a script.
Exactly like the Google Pixel 2.
Yeah. But it does more things. It does.
But you can't tell it's the same phone.
Well, but it does the the thing with the selfie feature,
right.
You turn it upside down, and I know all the things that it could do because we had to go through that and try to figure out which ones the writers would be okay with, But I think it's great. I like it. It's fine. It's a challenge, and we're up to the challenge, and we can make it's just part of producing. It's just like trying to get an actor's schedule to work out, so that we can shoot him when we need to shoot him. It's the same. It's just another thing for a producer to kind of just deal with and work out, and that's what we do for a living. So. It's fine. Throw it all at me. We can. Man,
it seriously, this has been an enlightening discussion.
Well, it has. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
I'm literally terrified of another platform being announced while we just had this podcast. It's going to happen.
But it's a beautiful time. I mean, we all here love content. We love to consume content.
I love the competition angle of it. It's like who's going to get the eyeballs.
There's never been a bigger supply and also never a bigger demand.
It hurts my bank account because I keep on buying these subscriptions.
Yeah, I think if they only made them like $5, like ESPN Plus is fine. It's another $5. I can handle that.
Right.
But another $15-$20 every month for all these programs.
There's going to be some consolidation.
It's definitely
I think there's going to be some acquisitions.
Yeah.
But thank you for jumping on.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining the Creative Disruption Podcast. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether it's on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share this with your friends.